I'm going to go through a little bit of the basics for how to analyze a video in Kinovea. So I've got a Kinovea window open here, and I'm going to go ahead and select a video file that I've chosen for doing this, and it's going to process as it brings it in. And so if I run through this video, it's relatively short. You can see it's a video of me tossing a ball to my dog. So pretty straightforward. The first thing that we need to do is define the working space. So there's a little bit of extra stuff in this video that I don't, particularly need. So I want to kind of limit, which portion of the video I'm using. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play and move forward through the video looking for the spot where I want to start my analysis. And I'm going to pick the spot where my hand starts to release the ball. So I'm going to hit play. And right about there, but I'm going to go ahead and step backwards using this frame motion tool or previous frame button. And I see right about there, I've got the ball in my hand, and I'm kind of starting that motion to bring it forward. So I'm going to go ahead and define that as where I want to start my analysis. So this bracket button on the top of my little toolbar here defines that point. So next I'm going to step through the video looking for my end point. So I'm going to click the next frame button, the ball's traveling, and I'm going to stop right about here where my dog is just about to catch the ball. So I'm going to define that as the end point using this right bracket button. And that's going to redefine my workspace for this video. Now if I click play, it's just going to loop through that small little portion of the video, and this gives me a point of which to analyze. All right, so some things I want to do to kind of define some properties here. I'm going to draw a line so that I can define the scale. If I don't do that, basically the Kinovea software only really knows how many pixels I am away from something or how long something is in pixels on the screen. If I define a scale, then I can convert that to some sort of more usable units. So doing so, I'm going to go ahead and select something that I know the length of. So I know that this fence behind me is 6 feet tall. So I'm going to go ahead and select the bottom of that, drag upwards to the top, and release that. Now if I right click on it, I can select calibrate. So this allows me to specify how long this is and what units that's in. So I'm going to say feet, and it's 6. And I can also use this to define my coordinate system. We can see that my video is not, terribly straight, and it's a little out of skew. So this might help define my coordinate system. I'm going to say that it is the line that defines my vertical axis. Now I specifically drew from bottom to top so that the direction of my axis has a positive upward orientation. Once that's defined, I can go ahead and move this out of the way so I don't have to look at it using the hand tool there. Next, what I want to do is start tracking this ball as it moves through that motion. Now Kinovea can do some automated tracking, so if I go ahead and right click on that ball and say track path, it'll start tracking the ball as I step through frame by frame. Now the trick is that if the ball gets crosses into any sort of place where it's hard to see, then it becomes a little bit harder for the software to track it. So for example, right about here in the middle of the toss, the ball passes above the fence and kind of in the tree line where there's not a lot of good contrast. So that's going to make it hard for the software to track it. And therefore, when I get to those points, I might have to help the software along by adjusting the tracking. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit on my picture here because my camera was kind of far away and I want a little bit of a better view. So I'm going to go ahead and select magnifier, and I'm going to zoom in on this area that includes myself and the dog. And because I don't really need everything going on behind it, I'm going to go ahead and say switch to direct zoom, so it kind of makes that the default window I'm looking at. All right, so let's get started with the tracking. I'm going to right click on where the ball is resting in my hand and say track path. So it's going to define these boxes, and these are search boxes where it's going to look for that ball. Now, one thing we should realize right away is the ball at the moment is in my hand, which means it looks different to the software than after it exits my hand. So it's probably not going to track it very well to start with. So I'm going to select the next frame, and I can see right away that my little crosshairs here is not centered on the ball, so I'm going to move it. It tracked it pretty well there, and it got off again there. So I can step through this, allowing the software to track and correcting its mistakes as we go. So you can see here that it's starting to get a little bit offset because the ball crossed this line on the fence, and it's getting the software a little bit confused. So I've used the software now to track the path of the ball. Now if I go ahead and play this video, it'll show the tracking of the ball as it proceeds across the window. So we've got that marked now, and one thing that I want to know then is what sort of kinematics am I getting out of this? So if I go up here to Tools and then Linear Kinematics, it brings up a window that shows me some various pieces of information. So by default, it's showing me speed given in units of meters per second, and I can change this to display other things. So vertical position, for example, versus time, it shows me where the ball travels on its trajectory. I can look at vertical velocity, so we can kind of get a sense of what's happening there, and we kind of see what we would expect, that it has a positive velocity that crosses 0, which is going to be at the apex of its motion, and then it goes to a negative velocity as it comes back down. Now, of course, we're always going to have some little artifacts in here due to, not quite perfect tracking and things like that. But this is useful. I can take these images and keep those. I can save the data to an Excel spreadsheet or something like that if I want to process it a little bit further on my own. But I have a lot of different quantities in here that I can go ahead and make use of. So that's kind of nice. Gives me a lot of information. Other things that I can do with this file now that I've got it marked and I've got the ball tracked, I can add more bits of information. So perhaps I want to label something. So I want to maybe mark. So here's the location where the vertical velocity is 0. I can go ahead and label that. If I wanted to annotate my video, I can add more information in here. I can add timestamps. I can add a stopwatch, for example. So when I play my video, it shows the progression of time. Maybe that's important. But I can do lots of different things in here, and I can define how I want to annotate my video. Lastly, once I have it annotated in a way that I want, I can go ahead and export this video so that I can save it. I can also save my annotations, which will save a separate file alongside the video, so that I can come back to it and add things later if that is something that I need. So hopefully this kind of gave you a rough example of how we might do some basic video analysis. Of course, the video that I included here in my example had a few issues with it, right? The orientation was a little bit skewed. My ball didn't have a nice solid color backdrop the whole way through, so the tracking wasn't able to follow it completely. And I'm using a GoPro for this video, which has kind of a fisheye lens, wide angle lens to it, and that skews the video a little bit. But for my purposes here, it's accurate enough to kind of give me some sense of what's going on. All right, thank you.